All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always ready to dig into something interesting.
Well, today's topic is, how do I even put this? Let's just say President Trump's back with another uh, polled idea.
Bold might be one way to put it.
We're talking about his plan to sell what he's calling gold cards to wealthy immigrants.
Yeah, for a cool $5 million each, these cards would give them a green card and a path to U.S. citizenship.
5 million. You know, when I first saw this, I thought it was like a joke or something. Like, is this really happening?
It's definitely getting a lot of attention, and it's raising a lot of questions.
For sure. We've got some articles here that lay it all out. And what we're going to try to figure out today is, first of all, is this even legal?
Yeah, that's the big one, right?
Then there's the whole question of, like, what would the impact be? Good, bad, everything in between.
And how does this compare to what other countries are doing?
Right, because we're not exactly the first to consider something like this.
Not at all. But before we get into all that, let's break down exactly what Trump is proposing here.
Okay, so gold cards, $5 million bucks. What else?
Well, the speed is pretty remarkable.
Gold.
Yeah, Trump's saying this program launches in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And he claims it's going to do wonders for the federal deficit, bring in all this money.
Oh, yeah, and of course he's saying it's going to attract all the high-level people.
Right, the best and the brightest.
He even suggested companies like Apple could, like, buy these cards for their top graduates.
It's definitely a unique approach.
Unique is one word for it. But there's this part that, well, it kind of makes you wonder if he's thought this through.
Which part is that?
The whole legal side of things.
Yeah.
He just casually throws out there that it's all worked out from the legal standpoint.
Yeah.
But, well, that's where the experts are kind of raising their eyebrows.
Yeah, a lot of legal experts are skeptical. They're saying there's no way he can just implement something like this without Congress. It's just not how things work.
So let's talk about the EB-5 visa program for a second, because that's what this whole gold card thing is supposed to replace.
Okay, so the EB-5 program, basically it lets foreign investors get a green card if they invest a certain amount in a U.S. business.
And create jobs, right?
Right, at least 10 full-time jobs. It's been around for a while, and Congress actually made some changes to it just a few years ago.
So how does Trump's idea even, like, fit in with that?
Well, his gold card idea is basically like saying, forget about investing in a specific business, just hand over $5 million bucks and boom, you're in.
So it's like cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. And that's why legal experts are like, whoa, hold on a second.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So who are these legal experts and what are they saying exactly?
One of them is Muzaffar Chishti, a senior fellow at the Migration Policy Institute.
Okay, what's he saying?
He said, and I quote, only Congress can end the EB-5 program. Pretty clear, right?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like someone who thinks Trump can just do whatever he wants. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's Stuart Verdery, who worked in Homeland Security during the Bush administration. He called it an uphill battle for Trump to change the program without Congress. He's basically saying it would require a whole rulemaking process, which takes a long time.
So even if Trump really thinks it's all legal and ready to go, it sounds like this could get tied up in court for who knows how long.
It's definitely a possibility.
But okay, let's just say, hypothetically, that he does manage to push it through. What then?
Well, Verdery brings up another good point. How do you even track if these, high-level people are actually creating jobs?
Right, because that was the whole point of the EB-5 program in the first place, right? To stimulate the economy.
Exactly. Verdery's worried it'll just become a way for rich people to buy their way into the U.S. without actually benefiting the economy. He called it a, quote, visa for rich people who want to live here.
So it's not just about whether it's legal, it's about whether it actually makes sense, even if it is legal.
Right, and that gets to something really interesting about this whole thing. This is Trump we're talking about, right?
The same guy who, built his whole political persona on being tough on immigration.
Exactly. So what's changed? Why this sudden shift towards, basically opening the door to wealthy immigrants?
Yeah, I mean, is it just about the money or is there something more going on here?
Well, Chishti, the guy from the Migration Policy Institute, he suggests that Trump's base has changed since his first term.
How so?
It's more diverse now, and there's a growing part of it, especially in the business world, that actually supports this kind of legal immigration, the kind that favors people with money and connections.
So maybe there's a political strategy here, especially since Trump's already talking about legal immigration and green cards for foreign graduates on the campaign trail for 2024.
It's definitely possible. He's even said foreign college grads should automatically get green cards, an idea he had back in 2015 but never actually did anything about.
So to recap, We've got a potentially massive change to immigration policy, legal experts saying, hold up, this might not fly, and maybe some political maneuvering behind it all. But here's the thing. This gold card idea seemingly came out of nowhere.
It did seem to come out of the blue.
I mean, he never even talked about it during the campaign, right?
Oh, that I recall.
This just makes this whole thing even more intriguing. Okay, so we've got Trump's plan, the legal questions, and this potential shift in his stance on immigration. But before we go any further, let's zoom out a bit.
Zoom out.
Yeah, like, how does this gold card idea stack up against what other countries are doing? Are we the only ones even thinking about something like this?
Actually, these kinds of programs aren't brand new. Some European countries have been offering what they call golden passports for a while now.
Golden passports, huh?
Right?
What's that all about?
It's basically the same idea, letting wealthy investors essentially buy their way into EU citizenship. But here's the kicker. The European Commission actually called for these programs to end back in 2022.
Whoa, so they're moving away from that model. What happened? Did they run into problems?
Yeah, big time. There were major concerns about corruption, money laundering, and tax avoidance.
So it wasn't exactly a smooth sailing success story.
Not really. Bulgaria and Cyprus completely shut down their programs. And Malta limited sales to only Russians and Belarusians.
Because of the war in Ukraine and all the sanctions?
Exactly. It's just become too risky.
So if the EU is backing away from these golden passports, does it really make sense for the U.S. to be trying something similar with this gold card?
That's a good question. It seems like there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
There definitely is.
Okay.
So before we dive deeper, what are your initial thoughts on all this? What's standing out to you?
Well, it's a lot to process, for sure. The idea of, attracting investment and talent from overseas sounds good on paper, but I can't shake this feeling that creating a system where citizenship is basically for sale to the highest bidder is a dangerous path.
Yeah, like, are we really saying money is the only thing that matters when it comes to becoming an American citizen? It feels like we could be trading one set of problems for a whole bunch of new ones.
I hear you. And that leads to a really important question. Would this gold card program really benefit the U.S. economy and attract those high-level people Trump's always talking about? Or would it just be a way for the wealthy to skip the line, maybe even opening the door to the same corruption and ethical problems they had with those golden passport programs in Europe?
That's the $5 million question, isn't it? Pun intended.
Right. And this is just scratching the surface. There's so much more to uncover here.
Well, buckle up, everyone, because we're about to dig even deeper into the potential consequences of this gold card plan.
It's important to remember this isn't happening in a vacuum. We're talking about immigration policy here.
Which is, let's face it, always a hot-button issue.
Definitely. And there are so many different opinions on it. People who want more immigration, people who want less, and everyone in between.
Right, and those opinions often come from real concerns, right? Like, how does immigration affect the economy? Or our culture? Or even national security?
Exactly. It's all tied to these big questions about what it means to be American, what kind of country we want to be.
Taking a step back, this gold card thing, it seems like part of a bigger trend, something we're seeing all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. This idea of wealthy people basically buying their way into citizenship, or at least residency. It's not just a U.S. or European thing.
Really? Like, where else are we seeing this?
Well, some Caribbean island nations, for example, they've been offering these citizenship by investment programs for years.
So, like, pay a certain amount and you get citizenship.
Yeah, and sometimes the price tags are even lower than what Trump is proposing. We're talking a few $100,000s in some cases.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing. But I guess from their perspective, it makes sense. If you're a country that's struggling economically, attracting wealthy people who are willing to invest, that could seem like a pretty good deal.
Right, it can feel like a lifeline. And for the individuals involved, it's a way to access new markets, maybe lower their taxes, or even just get a second passport.
Like an insurance policy.
Exactly. If things get bad in their home country, they've got another option.
I can see the appeal, but it still feels kind of, ethically iffy. Shouldn't citizenship be based on something more than just how much money you have?
That's a valid point. It really raises a fundamental question. Should citizenship be something you can buy and sell like any other product? Or should it be about something deeper, something more meaningful?
Because if it's just about money, you're creating a system that gives rich people a huge advantage. And that doesn't seem very fair or just.
No, it doesn't. It's a slippery slope, and it's something we really need to think about as a society. Once you start down that path, it's hard to turn back.
So, bringing it back to the U.S., If Trump's gold card plan actually happens, what kind of impact could it have?
Well, it's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but it's probably going to be pretty controversial, and there will almost certainly be legal challenges.
Makes sense. But beyond that, I mean, what could it actually change?
Well, economically, there's the potential for more investment and job creation, like Trump says. But there's also the risk of unintended consequences, like what if it drives up housing prices or widens the gap between the rich and poor?
And what about the people who come here? How could that change the country?
If a lot of wealthy immigrants come in through this program, it could change the makeup of certain communities, even the whole country. And that could have all sorts of ripple effects, socially and politically.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Oh, definitely. This story is just getting started.
And it's one we're going to keep following closely.
For sure. Because like we're seeing, immigration policy isn't just about laws and rules.
It's about our values, our identity, the kind of society we want to live in.
Exactly. It's a conversation that deserves our full attention.
That's a really good point. Like, how would this affect American culture?
Yeah.
Hard to say for sure, right?
It's hard to predict exactly how things would shake out, but, anytime you have a bunch of people coming in from different backgrounds, it's going to have some kind of impact.
Right. Think about it. Food, customs, languages, even just the ideas and perspectives people bring with them, it all adds to the mix.
Absolutely. It all becomes part of the cultural fabric of a place.
And depending on how those changes are received, it could lead to more diversity, a richer culture, but it could also cause tension, right? Like, what if people feel like their way of life is being threatened?
That's the key, right? How we respond to these changes, that's what will determine the outcome.
So it's not just about the policy itself, it's about the conversations we have, the attitudes we hold, and what we actually do.
You got it. Immigration, it's not just about numbers and statistics. It's about people's lives and the world we want to build together.
Well said. So it sounds like this gold card plan, if it actually happens, would be a pretty big social experiment.
You could say that, yeah. And it would really force us to think about what we value as a nation.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We started with this, let's be honest, pretty wild idea of Trump's to sell gold cards to wealthy immigrants. We looked at the legal stuff, the potential impact on the economy, and all the ethical questions it brings up.
And we saw how this idea fits into this global trend of people using their money to try to get citizenship or residency in other countries.
So for our listeners who are still trying to wrap their heads around all this, what's the key takeaway? What should they keep in mind as they dig into this more?
I think the most important thing is to realize immigration policy is complicated. There aren't any easy answers, and every solution is going to have pros and cons. We need to stay informed, listen to different points of view, and have those tough conversations about the future we want to build.
We can't just ignore this and pretend it's not happening.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in shaping immigration policy. Vote, talk to your representatives, support organizations working on these issues, even just having conversations with family and friends. It all matters.
And those conversations should be respectful, based on facts, not fear or prejudice.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we're all human. We share this planet, and we need to figure out how to live together peacefully and productively.
Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, that's it for our deep dive today. Hope you found this exploration of Trump's gold card plan helpful and got you thinking.
It's been great chatting with you.
Same here. And to our listeners, thanks for coming along on this journey with us. Until next time, keep digging, keep asking those questions, and keep the conversation going.